I'm looking at your Project 3 narratives. Here's your critique. We're going to start with Demi in this video. And we have grayscale imagery, and we have a small child. All right, so there's some attitude coming here, and some playfulness, and some preening, and more playfulness. So when we look at this, there's definitely a sense of spontaneity and individuality and exploration. I do wonder if we could rearrange this to build a little bit more, and as far as a narrative and telling a story, I'm not sure if I see a linear narrative, a linear story. I see a building of a character and a building of identity, and I kind of enjoy that. And the compositions are, in some ways pretty standard, just the figure portraiture standard, child portraiture standard, and there's nothing wrong with that. All the dynamics come from the interaction, the facial expression, and there is a lot in those sorts of things. I would almost want to move, say, this image first, and then push this image maybe out to here. And then I would almost have more of a building, because I go from something a little bit more serious, the hands down, a smile, hands still down, then the hands going up, and then I would have the hands on the ears, and then I would move to this one, and there'd be a little bit more visual continuity as I went from the images to images. But anyways, there's some good exploration here, and it certainly looks like you had some fun with your daughter. Thinking about high art, I'm not sure that this gets to that point of high art, but you explored what you were supposed to explore, and we're going to move on here. I'm going to go through these somewhat quick. I want to have more time to be critiquing people's final portfolios. I don't have a lot of time today. So, all right, we're looking at Natalie here, and color. And I just did a video earlier, and most people did black and white. The colors are more neutral and more natural, and that I think helps them, kind of flow together. And that can be the big problem in photography, is finding harmonious color schemes doesn't always just happen in our world. All right, so I go from the fireplace to the wood, into the fireplace, looking at the chair, table, floor, whatever that is. So when I look at these images, I get a little like push and pull here, and again, I'm trying to decide if I want to rearrange things. There's a loose thread through these, and I think in some ways that can be good, because I don't get this. I have to push and think. I feel like there's a connection here, and you're really making me work to find that connection. And personally, I like to be challenged in that way. I don't like a portfolio I don't like work that just gives me everything. Like if I look at it and I understand it instantly, there's no reason to ponder it, and you're giving me a reason to ponder it. I'm not sure if I'm going to come up with the answers here as I look at it, but I almost want to rearrange this. Like I almost want to put this image first, and then this image, and then the wood, and then moving out and moving out. I don't know if that would make it better. It might just make it more orderly for me. And like I said, there's some like disconnect between these things that forces me to think about it, and that would just help me to have one less thing here. Somebody else might get it more than I am, and and I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. Like I said, I think it's a good thing, because I'm curious. I'm curious about the images. I think they're well composed, well thought out, and a good use of color. I just don't necessarily know what it's all about, but that's okay. But I'm going to move on. And we'll take a look at Christie's narrative, and we start here inside. I like the light in this image, by the way, and putting shoes on, getting ready for a hike or a run, outside, stretching, more stretching. I like the figure, and then also in the background, the Joshua trees also seem to be in that same form. That is such a nice detail. Good job, good, well thought out. And then off running, and then a cool down stretch. So the story seems to me, and this one very simple and straightforward. And I don't know that, thinking of high art, if that gets me, I think I got the story, but it is so well shot, and the light, like in this image, there's such a nice use of composition and interaction between the objects. And this one, it's the light. This one's a little more straightforward. This one is just really nice how the figure and the environment all seem to be doing a similar sort of thing. I really love that photograph. And then the last two end up pretty simple, straightforward. And in the end, you end up with a very successful narrative with a couple really great images in here. So, all right. Anyways, we'll stop belaboring that point, and good job with that. And let's move along. All right, we're looking at Christie's, and she's got a couple narratives. She has one of the dog, and we're sort of following the dog into the water, and just that little adventure. It seems pretty simple and straightforward. We have another one here with bikes. I like the composition of this and the movement of the figure, and nice playfulness with the shutter speeds. I like how this figure on the right is there, and this other figure is moving around and around. And so there's a nice building. It's almost like film, where we have this figure moves a little bit, blur, boom, background. There's almost the cinematic feel to the composition of the series themselves, like it could just be a second or a couple seconds in a film. So I kind of like that feel, that cinematic feel, and I like the use of it. I guess in the end, I enjoy this more. It leaves me with more questions. I like that I don't see the identity. It almost seems like I'm trying to decide if it's a positive or negative interaction between these two figures. But the one is static and the other one is very dynamic and moving and blurring and then static. So this one leaves me with more thoughts and questions here. This one just seems like a little movement with some time with your dog or a dog. I like this composition when it looks at it. In the end, I'm much more engaged with the bike imagery, and I like how you're playing with the technical ends to create a psychological feel and maybe even a conceptual communication in this series. So I guess for me, I find the second series stronger. All right, I'm going to move along here. I think I'm going to get one more in this video. All right, I like the sort of street feel and the capture of this moment. I like the different facial interactions. Like she's smiling at you, and she's whatever, just completely oblivious, and he's like looking at her. So there's an interesting dynamic between these, just as a singular photograph. And then we move on to this image, and I'm not sure if I'm finding like a connecting thread and a narrative in these. And then I end with this image. That leaves me really curious. So I'm trying to figure out how these images build. I really like the individual photographs themselves, but I'm not sure the connection. And I also really like the color. We have this. This to me looks like just that fluorescent lighting. I don't know if you left your camera on daylight and shot under these fluorescents. And here it looks more like you balanced it more, but I like this transition from this fluorescent lighting. It actually creates sort of a mood that fits so well with that photograph. And then we transition to this, and then this, and then we go into this grayscale. And it's a bit of a hard transition between these two. I almost would have been like preferred this image here because there's some saturation, and then that. And then we move to this very abstract composition that is a little bit more difficult to connect to the other images. In the end, I think I like it. It's the narrative seems kind of challenging and a little bit loose. And I do wonder, because with the narrative, I want this connecting thread. And there's like a conceptual connecting thread of these interior spaces, retail spaces. And I almost, maybe if I went through them more, I might see it, but through like a similar figure in each of them. It might do that more. Like I think this is the same guy here, but he doesn't appear in the other images, at least as far as I can find, unless he's somewhere in the background. And something like that would be interesting to take someone from the background and bring them into the foreground. But you know what? I keep looking at these images. I want to look at them. I want to connect them. And the ending image is a very abrupt, but it seems like there's an intentfulness in the other images that I want to try and connect them. So I kind of enjoy that. I like things that challenge me, and this is challenging me. And the photographs are interesting. And, you know, I'm trying to put it in this context and narrative, but that's not my first instinct when I look at these images. So I have to think about it more, I guess, in the end. But for our purposes and means, you know, it works. So I think that's the last one for this series.